The world of crypto never sleeps, but every few years there comes a moment that defines the future forever. For XRP, that moment could be closer than anyone realizes. Analysts, investors, and insiders are all talking about 2026, the year that could finally reveal the truth about XRP's destiny. But what if most of what you've heard is wrong? What if the real prediction for 2026 isn't about hype or quick profits, but about a complete redefinition of money itself? Welcome back to Crypto Equation, where we decode the hidden forces behind digital finance and uncover the real truth about XRP, the one asset positioned at the center of global change. Tonight, we're diving into the predictions, the timelines, and the undeniable evidence that 2026 could be the most important year in XRP's history. But before we look forward, we have to understand how we got here. For nearly a decade, XRP has been misunderstood by the mainstream. Critics called it centralized, regulators attacked it, traders abandoned it, and yet it survived every storm. Why? Because utility always wins over noise. And as the global financial system quietly prepares for tokenization and real-time settlement, XRP's design begins to make perfect sense. To understand the prediction for 2026, we have to follow the timeline of transformation. In 2012, Ripple was born with a single purpose: to make money move as fast as information. That vision looked impossible at the time. The banking world was dominated by Swift, a messaging network built in the 1970s running on outdated technology. But Ripple's founders saw what few could imagine. They knew the internet would eventually demand an internet of value, and they built XRP to be its fuel. Fast forward to today, and the world is finally catching up. Over 100 central banks are exploring digital currencies. Trillions of dollars in assets are being tokenized on blockchain networks. The global liquidity system is being redesigned from the ground up, and sitting quietly at the center of this design is XRP. The prediction for 2026 isn't just about price, it's about position. It's about the point where utility meets necessity, where XRP stops being a speculative token and becomes an infrastructure layer for global money. The evidence is already there if you know where to look. Ripple is expanding its on-demand liquidity network into Africa, the Middle East, and Latin America, creating corridors that bypass outdated systems and move money instantly. These aren't theories, they're live networks processing billions of dollars annually. Governments are beginning to notice, and so are institutions. The International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the Bank for International Settlements have all discussed the need for a neutral bridge asset that connects digital currencies. Every report describes the same qualities: fast, scalable, energy efficient, and interoperable. Only a few assets on the planet meet those standards, and XRP leads that list. So what happens by 2026? The timeline becomes clear. Between now and then, three things will converge: regulatory clarity, institutional adoption, and global liquidity demand. When those three forces meet, the revaluation will begin, but not in the way most people expect. The market won't just explode overnight, it will evolve. First, regulators will finalize frameworks giving banks legal permission to use crypto assets for settlement. Then, institutions will quietly integrate Ripple's technology at scale. Finally, liquidity corridors will expand globally, connecting CBDCs, stablecoins, and digital assets through the XRP ledger. That's when the price model changes forever. Right now, XRP's value is driven by speculation, but in a utility-driven system, value comes from usage. Every transaction burns a tiny fraction of XRP, reducing supply and increasing scarcity. As volume scales, the price must rise to maintain liquidity efficiency. That's economics, not emotion. The prediction that XRP could reach unprecedented levels by 2026 isn't fantasy, it's math. Let's put it in perspective. The global cross-border payments market processes over $200 trillion annually. If XRP were to capture even 1% of that flow, it would need to support $2 trillion in liquidity. Divide that across the circulating supply, and you get values far beyond today's market. Even conservative models show double or triple-digit price ranges once institutional volume begins. But beyond price, the bigger truth is adoption. 2026 could be the year the world finally accepts that digital assets are not the enemy of banks, but their evolution. Ripple's partnerships with over 300 institutions are proof of that. Banks in Japan, Singapore, and the UAE are already testing cross-border settlements using XRP. Payment providers in South America and Africa are building entire remittance networks on RippleNet, and central banks are developing digital currencies designed to connect directly to these systems. What we're witnessing is the slow, silent construction of a new financial backbone, and XRP is its nervous system. The truth about 2026, then, is not about guessing how high the price will go, but understanding what will make it move. Once real-world utility becomes undeniable, price follows automatically. The speculation phase ends and the infrastructure phase begins. That's the moment when XRP transforms from an asset people trade to an asset the world depends on. But here's the part that most people miss. Every transformation in history goes through 3 stages: ridicule, resistance, and recognition. XRP has already survived the first 2. For years, it was ridiculed by Bitcoin maximalists, regulators, and even parts of the media. Then came resistance through lawsuits and uncertainty. But those battles are almost over. Ripple's victories in court and growing regulatory acceptance are paving the way for the final stage: recognition. And when that moment arrives, it won't be a slow awakening, it will be a global realization. Banks, corporations, and governments will all acknowledge what's been obvious to those who paid attention. XRP isn't just another crypto, it's the backbone of the new digital economy. And that's why 2026 matters. It's the point where the early believers and the late adopters collide. It's the point where the patient are rewarded and the doubtful are left behind. The pattern is repeating just like it did with every major technological shift. The internet, the smartphone, the electric car. At first people mocked them, then they ignored them, then they became impossible to live without. XRP is walking the same path. The only difference is this time you have a chance to be early. But let's address the skepticism, because no truth is complete without facing the other side. Some say XRP's price will never move because banks don't need to buy it. But that misunderstands how liquidity works. Banks don't hold XRP for speculation, they use it for settlement. Every time they use it, they create demand. That demand scales exponentially as more institutions adopt it. The more corridors open, the more liquidity is required. And when the demand outpaces supply, price adjusts instantly. That's how every asset in history revalues under new demand conditions. Gold did it in the 1970s when nations shifted from fixed exchange rates. Oil did it when global energy demand exploded. XRP will do it when digital liquidity becomes standard. That's why analysts predict 2026 as the turning point, because by then, global regulatory alignment will be complete. The US, Europe, and Asia will have established frameworks for digital asset settlement. Once that happens, the barriers vanish. Ripple's infrastructure is already built. All it needs is permission. The moment that permission arrives, the system activates. Money moves faster, cheaper, and globally. And XRP becomes the invisible engine behind it all. The prediction for 2026 isn't based on hype, it's based on timing. We're watching the foundation being laid right now. The last few years were about survival, but the next few are about expansion. Ripple has weathered lawsuits, market cycles, and skepticism, yet continues to grow. That's not coincidence, that's resilience. And resilience is always rewarded in the end. By 2026, Ripple's on-demand liquidity could dominate international remittances. CBDCs could be interoperable through the XRP ledger. Financial institutions could use XRP not as an option, but as a requirement for efficiency. That's when value crystallizes. That's when the world realizes what you already know. XRP isn't a get-rich-quick asset, it's a get-free-forever asset. Because once you own something that the system depends on, you're no longer chasing wealth, you're part of it. The truth about 2026 is that it's not the end of XRP's journey, it's the beginning of its dominance. The foundations are being laid right now while most of the world still sleeps. Every partnership announcement, every regulatory discussion, every pilot test is another piece of the puzzle falling into place. And when the last piece connects, the picture will be undeniable. What makes this so powerful is that the opportunity is still open, but not for long. Every cycle in crypto has a window where the early adopters quietly accumulate while the rest of the world debates. That's the phase we're in right now. The market has grown silent, prices seem steady, but beneath the surface, the infrastructure is forming at lightning speed. Ripple isn't talking about what it's building because it doesn't need to. The results are already visible for those who look deeper. Banks are testing corridors across continents, central banks are connecting private ledgers, and fintechs are embedding XRP liquidity tools into their operations. This is what mass adoption looks like before it becomes visible. When it does become visible, it won't come as a headline, it will come as a shock. By 2026, global value transfer will not look like it does today. It will be instantaneous, borderless, and fully tokenized. XRP was built for that moment. What gives the 2026 prediction credibility is not speculation but alignment. The timelines of regulation, technology, and institutional readiness all converge around that year. It's when multiple forces meet: the maturity of CBDCs, the exhaustion of outdated payment rails, and the global acceptance that liquidity must be digital. XRP stands precisely where those forces intersect. Analysts at major financial think tanks have already noted that by mid-decade, the volume of tokenized assets could exceed $10 trillion. If XRP captures even a small fraction of that flow, the implications for price are staggering. Yet the real transformation isn't just financial, it's philosophical. XRP represents a shift from control to connectivity, from national liquidity to global liquidity. In a world fractured by inflation and currency wars, a neutral bridge asset becomes not a luxury, but a necessity. That necessity is what will drive value far beyond anything charts can predict. But to get there, patience will be tested. Between now and 2026, markets will fluctuate. Headlines will attempt to shake conviction. Those who understand the bigger picture will hold through the noise. Because this isn't about short-term volatility, it's about long-term positioning. The investors who will win are those who treat XRP like digital infrastructure, not a lottery ticket. When the world realizes that cross-border value can move as easily as an email, XRP will already be part of that ecosystem, and so will you if you saw it early enough. Think of 2026 as the year when speculation meets reality. It's when the conversations about price turn into discussions about usage. Banks won't ask, should we use XRP? They'll ask, how fast can we scale it? Governments won't wonder if blockchain works. They'll implement it. And retail investors won't debate on forums. They'll watch the revaluation unfold. The key to understanding this transition is recognizing that financial revolutions always start quietly. No one announced the moment the internet took over the world. It just happened because it became indispensable. The same will happen with XRP. Every time a bank settles instantly, every time a cross-border payment bypasses SWIFT, every time liquidity moves through RippleNet, another invisible confirmation happens. And when enough confirmations stack up, the old system collapses under its own inefficiency. That collapse won't be chaos. It will be evolution. By 2026, that evolution will reach a tipping point. The truth about XRP's prediction isn't about fantasy numbers. It's about inevitability. The infrastructure is built, the technology is proven, and the need is global. The only missing ingredient is time. Imagine looking back a few years from now, realizing that the world was rewriting money in real time, while most people scrolled past it. XRP's 2026 prediction is your wake-up call, because every major innovation rewards those who act when belief is rare. The ones who waited for confirmation always pay the highest price. The XRP community understands this better than anyone. They've held through ridicule, legal battles, and bear markets. They've watched partnerships form quietly while the world doubted. Now their patience is about to be tested one final time. Between now and 2026, the line between speculation and adoption will blur. Ripple's partnerships will evolve into infrastructure deals. CBDCs will link through interoperable bridges, and financial institutions will need XRP's liquidity model to survive. That's not a prediction. That's trajectory. The truth is that XRP's destiny has never depended on hype. It's depended on design. It was engineered to solve the world's biggest financial problem: slow, expensive, fragmented money movement. That problem hasn't gone away. It's grown, which means XRP's relevance is increasing every day. The prediction for 2026 isn't that XRP will moon, it's that it will mature. It will move from a speculative narrative to an institutional reality. And when that happens, the price won't just rise, it will reset. Analysts have tried to model this reset using liquidity theory, and the results are astonishing. Even modest adoption across major corridors could force XRP's valuation into triple digits to maintain transactional efficiency. That's not wild guessing, that's arithmetic based on supply and velocity. What's even more compelling is that by 2026, supply will be scarcer than today. Every transaction burns a fraction of XRP, and over time, that scarcity compounds. Combine that with increasing demand from institutions, and you get the perfect setup for a revaluation event. It won't be a slow climb, it will be an adjustment, a new equilibrium that reflects true utility. So what should an investor take from this? First, understand that 2026 is not a finish line, but a threshold. It's the moment the digital economy becomes mainstream. Second, focus on conviction, not emotion. Markets reward consistency, not reaction. Third, view XRP as part of a larger macro shift, the transition from centralized liquidity to decentralized interoperability. Once you see it that way, every headline becomes background noise. The world is heading toward a future where value moves frictionlessly, and XRP is the bridge that makes it possible. By 2026, that bridge could be the foundation of global trade, banking, and finance. For the holders who stayed patient, that foundation could translate into generational wealth, not because of luck, but because they understood what they owned. That's the essence of every financial revolution: belief before proof, conviction before validation. If you're hearing this now, you're still early. The narrative hasn't gone mainstream yet, but it's building. Every regulatory win, every institutional partnership, every technical milestone is another signal that XRP's moment is approaching. When the world finally recognizes what you already know, you won't need to convince anyone. The numbers will speak for themselves. By 2026, XRP won't just be part of the system, it will be the system's pulse. So stay focused. Don't measure progress in days or weeks. Measure it in milestones. Each quarter brings new adoption, new clarity, new strength. This is how revolutions look in real time: slow, steady, unstoppable. The truth about XRP's prediction for 2026 is that it's not about guessing. It's about reading the timeline written in front of us. And if you read it carefully, it says one thing: change is coming. Not someday. Soon. When it arrives, those who prepared will live differently. They won't just watch the new economy, they'll own a piece of it. XRP was designed for that exact outcome. You can doubt it, ignore it, or prepare for it, but you can't stop it. The clock is ticking toward 2026, and history will remember who understood what was really happening. This is Crypto Equation, reminding you that every market cycle hides a moment when the future quietly becomes the present. For XRP, that moment has a date, and the world will never be the same after it arrives. XRP isn't a get-rich-quick asset, it's a get-free-forever asset. Because once you own something that the system depends on, you're no longer chasing wealth, you're part of it. The truth about 2026 is that it's not the end of XRP's journey, it's the beginning of its dominance. The foundations are being laid right now while most of the world still sleeps. Every partnership announcement, every regulatory discussion, every pilot test is another piece of the puzzle falling into place. And when the last piece connects, the picture will be undeniable.